what the musicians want from drummers.
Yeah, I mean, principally they want excellent time, and they want a sensitivity that supports the flow of the music and the attitude of the music. And you can use the word creativity, but I'm not even sure that creativity is the key word. What they want is something that adds sense to the music, adds resolution to the music. Depends on the context. If we're talking about pop tunes, you need that catchy beat. You need fills that help the direction of the tune in terms of differentiating verses, choruses, bridges. You need hooks. You need a sensitivity to distinguish sections, possibly. It really varies from songwriter, artist to artist. Often they'll tell you what they're looking for. Sometimes they'll ask you about what you had played on another record and they want exactly like it. Sometimes they'll say, you know what you played on a record, don't do anything like it. It's a question that doesn't have a one answer. It depends on the styles you're playing in, but generally, I'll repeat it again, they want time, they want flow, they want a cushion that makes the music work, no matter what context of style. That is our principal role. I mean, everybody's responsible for time, but the drummer lays it out in a special way because of the amount of rhythm that we can play simultaneously. But that makes sense because that is the reality. You can't turn apples into oranges. Certain roles are and have been defined, and our role, the central role, is defined. And if you don't provide that role, you're not doing what the music asks for, because the music asks for something. Mm-hmm. So of course, you can get a sense that this music doesn't need stated time, but more implied time. You might be asked to do that, or by the fact that you're called for the date, they assume your sensitivity will be such. There is a video I watched, I guess it was Steve Jordan talking about Steve Gadd, how he went in to do a tune, and as they were drinking coffee and talking, Gadd must have listened to the demo that they had put on maybe 10 times before he even went to the drum set. He listened to the music. He got a sense of what the music was offering to him, and he could consider what he could bring to the plate to make it a more effective song. Mm-hmm. So we got to listen, open our ears. We can't be thinking about our latest lick. So we can't be thinking about, man, I've been practicing this groove, I better use this groove. That's to me is a mistake. Yes, you can find ways to try to get things into the tune. That's a signature. Mm-hmm. It's great if you can do it. If you can do it. But that should not be the objective. Mm-hmm. Just like you don't want to practice on the bandstand. The music doesn't ask you to practice. The music asks you to play. And if your approach is denser, or which means more notes approach, or a more open approach, the music won't tell you it's wrong unless it's wrong, and it won't tell you if it's right because it will be right. So you just got to open your ears and be unselfish.
Okay. That's a really
play for the music.
That's a really great thought for everybody. When I started asking the question, I had precisely that idea. I also believe, and we share this, I think there's many musicians that think that the first thing is to listen, to feel, and to play from your heart, and play with your emotions and with your technique. Everything's connected. But I also believe, and I also feel and see, many people don't think that way, and they don't work that way. They don't produce that way, and that's why I created this channel. so we can talk about it. Because in that sense, everybody is talking about the same thing. Why is there so many of us still overplaying, still not getting the song right, the tune right? Why do you think that happens?
Because they're thinking selfishly, and they're worrying about themselves, which you have to, of course, you have to have your skills together so you don't worry about those physical things. But the reality is that they're not, sometimes they're just trying to be too creative, or they're trying to put too much into music when the music doesn't call for it, and it usually calls for the right balance. And there's the one exception to this whole thing is when you're a studio player, often people will tell you what they need, which may not be your first choice. So you have to either do it and continue your career as a studio musician, or don't do it, and the word gets out that you're not a very cooperative musician. So I think of course, it's obvious, the successful sidemen, recording sidemen specifically, do what the artist needs. Either he explicitly states it, or you intuitively, by hearing what he's doing, do the right thing. Maybe you wouldn't even been called if they didn't think you could do the right thing. Or you would, there are stories of some of the giants who are being asked to do something, and basically they stop playing and they say, okay, get that guy. I don't do that. If you want him, get him. And there are tons of stories of drummers who have their own personal understanding of what they do and they don't do, and you don't try to do what you don't do. When you're coming up, you try to do everything. And that's part of the process, which is interesting. So, we make our choices. Unfortunately, often we become lost in the direct line, or when we're lost in what is truly important. And often one's skills are not as highly developed as one thinks. There's no reason that you have to be a jack of all trades stylistically, or even in any sense of what a jack of all trade means. Yeah. So we are sometimes being told that, if you're not a jazz musician, you're not a great drummer, and that's ridiculous. I mean, that the fact, or don't learn to read music is not going to help you. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you want to be a complete musician is a reading musician. In fact, there are men of my generation and older and younger who would say you are not a musician unless you can read. It's depends which side of the fence you want to sit on. Yeah, and just like, is there good music and bad music? Is there bad music? It's in the ears of the beholder. Drummers who are not able to play less, or not able to find the correct concept in a song because they don't believe that's the correct concept. Okay, let you have to figure it out for yourself, and and that's okay. I mean, we can't force somebody to be or believe what it's not. Surely you could put things in front of them and say, here's 1,000 records. Now, what is consistent about all of them? So, what are you trying to make? A consistent record, or are you just trying to reinvent the wheel? Sometimes you just can't reinvent the wheel. Yeah, you got to play in tune. Don't say you can play out of tune. That's not okay to play out of tune. It's not okay to play out of time. In terms of what out of time means.
Yeah. And people who have passion about studying the greats and the history of this instrument, often I think I have found that many breaking ground, can we say this? Guys that
Groundbreaking
guys
not too many of them.
They were not trying to be out of the box. They were just doing what they listened to in their experiences, in their roots, cultural music, or they were thinking about 2 or 3 guys that they loved, and they tried to emulate, but doing something different, and then they created.
And then they create what they create. I mean, often you don't go about trying to create something unique. You can. People find it all different ways. But yeah, most. Probably one of the greatest recording drummers of all time is Steve Gadd. And he said, "Man, I went on my first date and I was nervous. I played simple. Everybody loved it. I didn't go out of my way to play nervous. Be nervous. I didn't go out of my way to play simple. It's just what came out because it was the thing I was most concerned about. And I was lucky. They actually found it a compelling way to play time." Mm-hmm. And if you think about why certain guys prefer to play with a drum machine rather than a drummer, it's why the drum machine is not going to get in the way. It may not add what you need also, but that's why on a session you should sometimes ask: is there going to be overdubs of other percussion? Do you want me to overdub later? What are we looking at? A singular take, or are we looking at a multi-track drum part? You need to ask those questions to determine the kind of parts that will work best in the music. So sometimes young drummers forget to ask that question, and not until it's too late. Oh, I never should have played that fill because there's a percussion. I didn't know there was a percussion that's going to play on top of this. So,
yeah, and it all comes back to listening and asking, being aware. Yeah.
If you're talking about being in a session, and a band can be the same thing. I mean, a band has a little bit more leeway because you're not under the same pressure of time. Because what you learn about in New York, especially, that time is money. I mean, that's why there's no lunch break. Food is brought in. If you eat, you eat. But nobody goes out for lunch to come back to continue the session. It doesn't happen,
I understand the message for the Portuguese.
Well, I'm sure it's just not solely Portuguese, but you learn really young. Time is money. That's why people want to get it done first or second take, or if one can, And there are different ways to proceed with that.
It used to be like this here. We would have so big. The lunch breaks would be so long that when you come back to the studio, you don't know the guys anymore.
Well, you're so full. Who wants to play?
It's like,
take a nap.
Oh, come on. Okay, let's play again. Play again.
Let's do this again. So I also believe that often, the first or second take is actually your best take.
Yeah. It's true.
Generally, yes. It's not
if
always.
You're into it,
but
it is.
Yeah. Can a groove get deeper? Yes. But so often, that's interesting. Well, I think you have to have a balance. I mean, people are asking the drummer to be assertive and to be confident, and to you contribute when you have to contribute. It depends on
sometimes you have to
keep your mouth shut. It's not your record. If somebody asks, okay, but I think you have to be understanding about what you should contribute and what is not the correct role to contribute. Don't start telling the engineer how he should be mixing this thing when you're not even part of the mix, or you hope that you have your drum sound. You want that engineer to capture your drum sound, not his drum sound that he wants. And that's always when you're a young player, that can be a problem too, because people will run you crazy about it, and you're just not comfortable. You got to be comfortable. You got to play your sound. They have to capture your sound in the studio.
That's why I usually don't. People that tell me, but don't you choose your mics? And I say, no, mics are not my. I have my drumming prepared, and I hope that the guy will listen and he will change mics when he has to change. But I don't tell him what to do. If there's something wrong, I have a talk with him, but I usually don't go and say, no, I use this mic on the bass drum, because he can add something, because if he's a good
you
listener,
hope that he's a competent engineer,
he will add
and
something.
It's his studio, and he has those that equipment, because it's always bad to say I use this mic, and he says I don't have that mic. So then what are you doing? I'm sure there are drummers who bring their mics.
they also-
I mean, it depends on which part of the process are you focused on, or you can be focused on both. I mean, that's again. I mean, we all choose how we want to create our sound and how we want to behave and contribute in if we're talking studio work or even live. So we have to be open-minded, and we got to listen.